the Bible, we it often says that in marriage, the relationship between a man and a woman, the wife must submit to her husband. But obviously, we live in a society and culture where that's very much not what they want it to be or the case.
Right.
And because we live in an age where everything's equal, everyone should be equal, and so I understand why that is, but I have a hard time explaining that to other people.
To submit means to yield in love. Before Paul writes in Ephesians 5, wives, submit to your husbands, he writes, y'all, everybody, submit to one another as to the Lord. A Christian is someone who is learning to yield to another in love. I better yield to her in love. I better yield to him in love, and to her, and to her, and to her, and to him, if I'm a follower of Christ. Now, what does that mean practically? It means I am to work for her well-being, for the good in her life, for the good in his life. That's what it means to love, to work for the good in his life, her life, her life. So Paul writes, submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. Then he says, wives, submit to your husbands. He's not saying anything new. He started off with submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. And so now he says, wives, submit to your husbands. But what's really radical, what is really countercultural is he goes on and says, husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave his life for her. That's radical stuff. That is the glue of marriage. Loving each other as Christ loved the church. Yielding to each other in love, submitting to each other. Very important. What's the biggest reason for divorce? Selfishness, self-absorption, narcissism. Call it whatever you want. It's basically, I get my way, and I'll use you if I have to get my way. And that blows apart a marriage. And too many of you know exactly what I'm talking about. Because you've watched mom and dad go to war. Because it's got to be my way or the highway. And Paul says, no, you don't do it that way. Instead, you submit to God, you submit to each other. Does that mean that you're inferior? Absolutely not. He never says that once. Now, exactly how that gets fleshed out between a husband and a wife, that's a very personal issue. And so some of us will fall into the Texas lifestyle, a little more conservative than where I come from, which is New England. So there will be differences in the way that that's fleshed out. But the basic point is real simple. Sir, when you marry a woman, love her as Christ loved the church. And when you marry a man, submit to him as we all submit to Christ. Submit to each other, love each other, and you'll have the best marriage around. And it'll bring delight to you. And guess what? I would prefer to live in the Bronx, New York City, happily married, than to live in Honolulu, divorced. And I think too many of you know exactly what I'm talking about. You want to destroy some children's lives? You go right at it, mom and dad. You fight to the death. Yeah. When the elephants fight, the grass gets trampled. And in this case, the grass is the kids. So Christ is dead serious. The Bible's dead serious. You learn to submit to God and then to submit to each other, which means you serve each other, you encourage each other, you build each other up. And ladies, don't marry a man who doesn't understand that. And men, don't marry her just because she's gorgeous. Marry someone who loves Christ and who loves you.
In 1 Corinthians 14:34, the women should keep silence in churches, for they are not permitted to speak, but should be subordinate, as even the law says.
Yep.
Can you touch on your opinion on if women should be allowed to speak in churches or not?
Yeah, it's real simple. In the next chapter, or the previous chapter, Paul writes, when women pray and prophesy, they're to have their heads covered. Well, what are you, Paul, schizophrenic? You're telling women when you pray and prophesy, have your heads covered. That's obviously talking, praying, and prophesying in public. And I don't let women talk. Now, you got to read in context. You don't just interpret any way. Let me ask you guys, how do you interpret what you read? How do you interpret any book? Come on, guys, help me. How were you taught at this fine university to interpret what you read? What principles are there? Thank you. Who said that? Right on, brother. Context. You don't rip one line out and say that's the point of the author. To interpret, you read in context, as the gentleman said. What's another point? If it's science, do you read it as poetry? You will flunk. If it's poetry, do you read it as science? No, you will flunk. You respect literary genre, literary style. So when Jesus says, I am the good shepherd, does that mean that he was literally a shepherd who took care of sheep? He's using metaphor, isn't he, to make a point. When Jesus says, I am the light of the world, is he claiming to be a 100-watt light bulb? No. He's using metaphor once again to make a point. So, you read in context, you respect literary style, and you interpret. So when Paul says, when women are praying and prophesy, they don't have their heads covered, and I do not allow a woman to speak in public, what on earth is he talking about? Well, when he says, I do not allow a woman to speak, the context is order in worship. What was happening? We'll just go out and watch the movie Yentl. Barbara Streisand plays a young Jewish girl who wants to get an education. And in her culture, women were not allowed to get an education. So she has to disguise herself as a male in order to go to school. So what happens? The gospel of Jesus Christ comes in, women are just as valuable as men, and the women go nuts. They abuse their new freedom. And they start just blurting out all over the place, and Paul says, boom, time out, keep your mouth shut. Go out and get an education, learn like Priscilla has, and my good friend Priscilla, who's obviously not a guy, is helping me, the Apostle Paul, to teach the great preacher Apollos how to preach.
Someone who is double-minded is unstable in all that they do. Like, I know that's what the book of James says, but what does God think about someone who is double-minded?
I doubt every day. Every time I sin, it shows I don't take Jesus seriously. I think I got a better way, so I doubt. But hopefully I am not double-minded. Meaning by that, well, maybe Jesus today, maybe not tomorrow. No. I have put my faith in Christ. It is my desire to obey him and follow him, but I blow it every day. I got bad habits. I have doubts. But I better not be double-minded, uncommitted, not really trusting Christ, just sort of using Christ to get me out of hell into heaven or whatever. No, don't do that. Don't play that game. So doubt, we all have it. No problem. God understands doubt. It's just fine. Just watch how Jesus treated Thomas, who doubted his resurrection. He didn't come up and say, you're an idiot, Thomas. No. He said, right here, Thomas, take your hands and put them in the nail prints in my hands. Take your hand and thrust in the spear in my side. And Thomas stopped doubting and believed. And Thomas bowed down and said, my Lord and my God. So we all doubt. But some of us are into being double-minded. We're sort of playing a game. Half on one side, half on the other side. No, I'm not going to make a decision. No, I'm not going to commit. I'm going to give intellectual assent to some facts. But then my will, I'm going to live my way all the time. That's not good. And James condemns that. Says, watch out.
So I've got a YouTube channel that I make videos about race cars, but I always try and spread the word and be a light in all of my videos. How do you find the right words that can actually impact someone when you're trying to speak to a large audience? Because every person has their own biases, issues, everything. How do you try and spread the word the most effectively? Like, how do you find the words?
Even in Scripture, we hear that as long as the gospel is preached, that's what's important. It doesn't matter who it's going through. And yet, I would say it's most effective that it's when we are on the basketball court, it will always be teammates or guys we're playing with who think Jesus is a joke. Any type of the miraculous is a joke. But they'll say, you know what's tempting for me to actually check Jesus out, the reason why I would, is when your guy's character actually stacks up. It's nothing with what you said, but it's actually your character. So when you don't respond when somebody cheap shots you. So when you actually don't get angry because you're just missing shots all day. So you're not cursing. You stand out. Now, how else do Christians stand out in such a way where the world becomes more tantalized by the Christian doctrine and message? How you handle suffering. I've seen many atheists become Christians based off of how Christians handle suffering. They say, wow, I want something like that. What's going on there? Another one is joy. How in the world, why are you such a happy, joyful person? If you're a nihilist and you believe there's no God, no objective meaning and purpose in this world, and that you're going simply to death and are going to lose everything you've experienced here, everything you've worked for, and all your relationships, consistently, you should not be a happy person. But a Christian is somebody who's joyful. So, sharing out of your heart and emotions on something like a YouTube channel as a Christian, how you've dealt with suffering, how Christ is there with you and how he's a suffering God and how that has helped you in your life. Also, speaking out of joy and happiness and that being real, not something you just put on. And thinking through, well, why am I joyful? Why am I happy? Well, because your worldview stacks up in such a way where it would be consistent to be happy and joyful. We're even commanded to be joyful and happy. So we're supposed to be professional at being joyful and happy. But people of other worldviews have to explain, well, why are you happy if you're really living out your worldview?
How do you not become a lukewarm Christian without trying to stop all sinning because it's impossible? How do you not become a lukewarm Christian, but if you want to keep going on with Christ?
All right.
When I'm speaking with a Christian, and I fall into this type of thinking often myself too, even as a pastor and doing this, don't focus on trying. Because if I'm talking with somebody in my office and they say, I'm trying to be better, I'm trying to be a better Christian, they typically don't understand the Christian faith because it's not about trying. It's about Christ who tried for us and fully completed the work for us on the cross, so we don't need to try. But I see where you're going in the sense of, well, okay, but does that mean, again, cheap grace? I can say I'm a Christian and do whatever I want. No. What I would say when it comes to understanding how not to be lukewarm, because Jesus will say, I'll spit you out of my mouth, go with the following type of thinking. Understanding his grace, and it's not primarily about your good works. That's simply just a response to his grace. Focus on the line of thinking of a woman came to this pastor's office, and this was a year prior to their second meeting. And she said, hey, I really got to know Christ. Someone introduced me to him. He made a lot of sense in my own life. I got baptized and I started going to church. Met with him a year later, this pastor, and she said, I didn't understand Christ at all. Not whatsoever. And the pastor said, what do you mean? I thought you got baptized and you've been coming to church. And she said, no, I treat Christ like he's my own secretary. I consult Christ whenever I want to, and when things aren't going well or if I'm too busy, no, Christ is on the sideline. Now I understand Christ is supposed to be at the very center of my life, so what I do, what I think, how I behave, should always be focused on WWJD. The bracelets are no longer worn now, but in many ways they should be. What would Jesus do in this very moment? Lastly, the second way I would focus on it is, you are what you are in your solitude. You are what you are in your solitude. What does that mean? That means when you're driving, when you're in the shower, when you are anywhere where it's just you and your thoughts, where does your mind gravitate towards most quickly, most easily? If it's making money every single time, if it's anxiety over something like school every single time, if it's something good like sports every time, that is your God. Religion is what you are in your solitude. So, to not be lukewarm is to look at that, check out my thinking, where my heart is, and say, I'm going to redirect. I'm going to meditate. I'm going to talk to God. God, you are at the center of my life, so to not be lukewarm, I can't treat you as a secretary. I got to treat you as the creator of the entire cosmos who sent his only son to die on the cross for me to show me that type of intense love.
What are your thoughts on being friends with someone that's an atheist?
I have no option if I follow Christ but to be a friend to every single Homo sapien on the planet that I am able to. Jesus commands me to love and respect all people. Does that mean that I respect the deeds? All the deeds that I do? No, I don't. At times when I do evil, I don't respect that. I think that's evil of me to do that. Similarly, when I go into a prison, I respect all the prison inmates because they're all created in the image of God. But I deplore the stealing, murder, rape that they have committed. It's evil and it's wrong. But I, as a follower of Christ, have no option but to love and respect every single human being. Now that's weird of me, because that's weird of Jesus. Because if there is no God, we live in a dog-eat-dog world. It's survival of the fittest. And so therefore, if someone hurts me, I'm not to love them. I'm to cut them off at the knees. Why? Because I got to protect myself. And to love someone who's really warped puts me in a position of vulnerability. Because they could use me. They could take advantage of me. Yeah, that's right. That's exactly what it means to love. To put yourself in a position where your heart can be broken, where people can lie to you, abuse you, manipulate you. That's right. Now, that doesn't mean we're to be naive. And I can promise you, I don't trust people who are liars. And I don't trust people who are thieves. I lock my door, and if you steal from me, I'm not going to put my wallet in front of you. But I will forgive you, and I will try and love you and respect you. But that does not mean that I'm going to say, oh, you've abused my little grandchild? Well, go right ahead and take my grandchild out for a few hours. No. So to love all people does not mean you trust all people in the same way. And let's remember that very clearly. To turn the other cheek does not mean that if a babysitter abuses my granddaughter, I'm going to hire her next week to take care of my granddaughter again. No. Will I forgive her? Yes. I will not trust her with my granddaughter. No way. It's a very difficult question you're asking. All right, there's a Russian novel. It's about this guy, Onegin, who's an aristocrat in Russia. He meets a young peasant girl named Tatiana. She loves him. She writes love letters to him. He dismisses her. Several years later, Onegin goes to a party, and he sees this absolutely breathtakingly gorgeous woman across the room. He goes up to her, and he's just about to talk to her when he realizes that's the peasant girl, Tatiana. Whoa. He tries to woo her to himself. She says, I'm sorry, I'm married, and I'm not interested. And he realizes the door is shut. She communicated her love to me years ago, but I thought she was low-life peasant. I'm an aristocrat. But now that I see how she's matured, wow. Sorry, Oregon, the door is shut. Jesus Christ loves every single one of us today. We have to choose how we're going to respond to his love. When we die, or when Christ returns a second time, the door will be slammed shut. There'll be no more opportunity to respond to his love. That is why we do something as stupid as stand out here and plead with people, think hard. Think hard about Jesus Christ. Read the Gospels and ask yourself, does the evidence of the way Jesus lived, taught, died, and rose from the dead point to him being the truth, or does it not? Because if Christ is the truth, your eternal destiny and my eternal destiny depend upon how we respond to him.